Hey, welcome to episode 144 with Karan Bedi, the CEO of MX Player. Amit, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. Looking forward to this one. It's about the media, which is always fun for me.
Yes, I'm sure. Sure you definitely had a lot of questions for Karan,
A
and
lot more questions on this than I normally participate with. Yes, I think that is true.
exactly. But of course, I mean, MX Player is a brand which I'm sure a lot of us already know here. In fact, they've been around for a while. The brand has been around for a lot longer, and we'll get into that with Karan, of course. But it's very interesting to see how big they have gotten, and
Mhm.
of course, the reason why as a company, as a product, they've been able to scale so much. And it was really interesting to hear a lot about the focus on tech they have, the focus on the user experience that they have. It's
The
commendable stuff.
the free streaming focus, right, which is unusual in a OTT other than YouTube. So
Yes,
I thought that was
exactly.
really interesting as well, right? The fact that leveraging advertising in significant ways.
Exactly. Well, that's what you'd expect from the Times
That
Group
is true.
folks. So, hey, Karan, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Thanks, Shiladitya. Thank you for having me. Doing very well, as I hope you are.
As yes, we are. Well, like we were saying earlier, I wish this was over a real coffee or a beer, if possible. But this is what we have: screens at each other with our own personal drinks, if whatever is available. So, but thanks so much. Thanks so much for joining us here. I've actually been wanting to talk to you and the MX team for a while. Uh, of course, you guys have had crazy last few years, I would say, in the industry, doing so much to actually shape it, if I may say so, right? But before we get into a little bit of the stuff which everyone probably has heard about, I'd love to hear how you actually jumped into the fray here at MX, in the Times Group, and also what your vision was when you sort of jumped into this role, coming from your background. If you could give us a little bit of backstory.
Sure. So I think, very kind of you to say that we're shaping things. That's good to hear. Hopefully, that was what we set out to do. So if you are being able to do some of that, that's very positive. So it is interesting actually how I got here. I was I know some of the senior management folks at times pretty well. And MX at that time, as you know, started out life as a video utility player, right? It basically allowed you to
Yeah.
play back video files from different providers. And at that time, they were in India looking for partners to help them monetize that utility better. And so they spoke to a
Mhm.
whole bunch of people who they thought could work well with them on the ad side, and help in lifting ARPUs and thinking of more ad products and more monetization strategies. And one of the people they spoke to was Times, as you can imagine, right? Big
Yeah.
ad sales engine. And at that time, I happened to be, like I said, because I was friendly, I happened to be sort of discussing this with one or two of the folks there, and just as a sort of friendly chat, saying, what do you think, etc., etc. And that discussion kind of led to this thing saying, hey, this is pretty interesting. And at that time, remember, I used to be running something called Eros Now, which was one of the earlier
Yeah.
OTTs in India, and for the diaspora audience. And so I was sort of intimately familiar with the space, and this was, I would say early 2017. So this is
Right.
maybe 6 months after Jio had launched. The India data revolution had started off in full swing. The first few months had been crazy. Everybody could see that this was going in a
Yeah.
direction that was pretty unique. So I think it was a confluence of those three factors that they came. They were talking to partners. I had an understanding of the OTT business. Data in India had suddenly become highly available and cheap. And
Mhm.
all those factors sort of combined to say, hey, can we take this distribution base, which is pretty sizable at that time, of people who want to watch video, right? Because that's what you use MX to do, and layer on a service layer to this, so that you can actually take um, take that audience and serve them up with content that we think they'd like. So that was the sort of initial thesis of this idea. And at that point in time, it was a wild idea, right? I mean, how who will own this? What will be the different the structure? Who will who will run it? What will be the content? Blah blah blah. Because remember, for what it's worth, I mean, Times is obviously largest media company in the country, but not that at that time much into sort of mass fiction entertainment, right? Their bread and butter has been more non-fiction, news, sports, lifestyle, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So so fiction was a new beast for that entity, and obviously we can talk about this later in the show, but how we've also sort of evolved our strategy quite a bit since we first started out there. But I think that was the sort of initial genesis of this, and then obviously there was lots of conversations with different people in terms of discussing with the MX folks how they thought about it, with the Times folks. Then I sort of stepped in there and said, "Look, this is something interesting," and it all kind of worked out. And I ended up in this fortunate position where I got to drive this vehicle forward.
Wow. And what you just mentioned, right, is actually a bunch of interesting details where which not probably everyone knows about, right? This was a time when Geo had happened. Obviously, the market was ripe. We know that. But there were already a bunch of players, including Heroes Now. But there were like mainstream players like Hotstar was there, Sony was there. These guys were at the time leading the pack. You guys not only didn't, like you said, have your own content. I mean, I think originals was still sort of catching up, but you didn't have let's say the content base to sort of lead with and create a niche. At the same time, the MX app itself was literally, I think, the South Korean company or based somewhere somewhere there, and literally just for local video playing, not streaming.
It was
so
VLC
it wasn't
for,
even.
It was like VLC.
Yeah,
for
it was
mobile
VLC
phone,
for.
right?
It is VLC.
That's what I used to
in
think
fact,
of it,
let me put it this way: VLC is MX player. Like MX is far larger than VLC. VLC, I think, is a I think potentially the three of us here, and maybe even a lot of folks who are listening to this will identify with VLC, because it was a bit of a, and I'm a self-confessed geek, so it was a bit of a geeky piece of software.
Correct.
And it was primarily, it's been around since the the desktop era, right? Since just not long after the internet itself. MX was actually purpose built for mobile devices. And while VLC obviously ported to mobile devices and is available across all platforms and all of those things, but MX was specifically built out for mobile devices with a specific focus on why it was good for those. So, for example, I'll give you just a couple of random examples, and this is that same DNA we've taken forward when we think about our streaming technology today, right? And that time, remember, this was streaming technology. But
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
For example, it had the most efficient use of processing power on mid-end Android phones, right? Which means most efficient use of processing power means least use of battery, least heating up, right? Which is a huge factor, right? When you're talking about mid-range,
like an hour of video, 2 hours of video, yeah.
So you're looking at a mid-range Android phone. Remember, you're not necessarily dealing only with the sort of iPhones and the top end, Samsung Galaxy, Xiaomi Mi Pro levels of devices, right? You're dealing across the board. So it used least amount of processing power because these guys had actually rewritten, they had actually gone down to the codec level and torn about open source codecs and rewritten them to that level. So even today, our actual playback software, our code of playback on the player is miles ahead of anybody in the industry in the world. It's not more. I would go so far as to say that most sort of standard OTTs use off-the-shelf players, and there are a lot of familiar ones, right? JW Player is one. There's quite a few out there. There's a couple of package solutions as well that do well. And then obviously there are like the big guys like Amazon and Netflix who probably rewrote their own players. But this was designed ground up for large emerging markets, right? So it did a fantastic job of playing back content on these Android devices. So
Wow.
so that's what this was. And as you said, we didn't have any sort of discernible advantages at that time, right? Apart from the fact that we had distribution to some extent, but it was distribution of an offline app. So, but that is kind of where we also excelled, right? So if you look at mass entertainment, right? Take any market. And since this is a hour-long session, I will ramble on a little bit. So feel free to stop me.
Please, please.
But you take a look at most media markets in the world, right? You have primarily television as you had primarily television as the mass entertainment platform, right? And then obviously you had theatrical, you had movies, but it was primarily television. And then obviously over the last 10 years, slowly streaming video has been emerging. But if you looked at large populations even 5 years ago, television was the mass entertainment platform. Now you look at TV in India. TV in India claims to be 900 million people, right? And that is based off this calculation that people do of saying this, but there's actually only 200 million TV screens. So there's 900 million is this calculation that says 200 million TV screens multiplied by 4.5 people per family and 900 million people. And yeah, there's like some sampling data to kind of show that this is valid and this, that, the other and whatnot. But to be honest, like, yeah, maybe back in the day when there was only TV and some massive national event happened of importance, maybe then everybody gets onto the same TV channel at the same time or the same TV at the same time. But very frankly, 20 crore TV sets, 200 million TV sets is nothing. So what that did is because of that, and because there was for various regulatory reasons, economic, commercial reasons, there was very little diversity in TV content because of the way channels were distributed here. So the primary economic model of television was daily soaps aimed at 28 to 40-year-old women, right? I mean, when's the last time either of you guys put Indian TV on, right? Linear TV. I'm not saying using a device like a TV with smart TV functions or, hopefully whatever, pirating
real channels,
content.
you mean? Yeah.
Real actual channels, right? Not for a long time.
More than a year.
Because
years.
Years, not 1 year, multiple years.
My bet would be somewhere 5+ would be my bet, right? If you
This
think about
television in my room is not connected to any cable whatsoever. It's only got a Chromecast on it. So
there you go, right? So my guess is 5 years is my guess for people like you. But the thing is, and when you combine the fact that there was no content on television for anybody except that cohort, plus let's say some reality TV that expanded a little further than that, right? You have your couple of big game shows and reality shows. You had a situation where a very large part of the country did not actually have entertainment to watch. There was no mass entertainment. If you were, let's say, 18 and male or 18 and female, what did you watch? Fine, you can go to the movies every once in a while, but firstly, by the way, there are not more than probably, I don't know what the official number is, that there are probably 6,000-7,000 theaters in India, screens in India. That's it. It costs money. There's N number of movies in a year. So what do you do when you want to watch entertainment? Right? Which is why
there's Western content, but everyone didn't love it. I mean, it wasn't for the
Western content. Even today, Western content barely dents. Even if you look at the box office figures, India is one of those few markets where Hollywood content is less than 10% of box office, right? Whereas the US box office has been the almighty conqueror of pretty much every other media market. It's like 10-12% in India. If you count all the dubs and this, that, the other. Actual English language is probably less than 5. But long story short, what this did was that in not having content actually became an advantage, right? Because you are not limited to because when you put television content on OTT, what you're doing is you're telling your audience that is watching that content, okay, now you have one more platform to watch it on, right?
Yeah.
But if they put that content on OTT, the two of you who had not put on a TV for 5 years are not going to put on some OTT and watch the same stuff on it, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't change. So I think that's the really big thing that we managed to figure out. And when you looked at the international guys, you looked at Netflix and Amazon and all of these guys, I think they again came in with a large, large uh, library or large sort of storage of big international shows, which do have an audience in India, but again, a very limited audience, right? As you said, it's the same as the Hollywood movie kind of audience. So
Yeah.
what we did was, when we looked at this, we said, okay, look, here's television. Here's the big international guys focusing on their shows. And because of the fact that their libraries were focused on a certain kind of audience, the shows they made, even in India, were again corollaries to that audience.
Yes.
Right? So if you've got a captive audience of, let's say, people like you then make more shows. Even when you're investing here locally, you're investing locally for people like you. And when you've got that big TV audience, to retain them, or you know the audience you have, right? So you want to retain them, you want to give them more to watch. This left this giant hole in the middle, is where we stepped in. Young, does not watch television because there's nothing to watch on television. Is not primarily interested in watching big international shows because the contexts are very different. The pacing is different, the characters are different, the families are different, the relationships are different, the language is different. And remember, content is culture, right?
Yeah.
And while there will always be an audience that will watch content that is from different cultures and whatnot, there is, and you know, when you feel like exploring, I watch content from all kinds of different cultures. But there is a comfort level with the culture that you're from. And that is what we were able to sort of hone in on and say, okay, let's talk about this. Let's go with this. So that was one major part of it, right? Figuring out what that was. And then, as you said it yourself, right? That at that time, originals wasn't really, kind of on the scene.
Yet.
So, that's what we had to do that, right? We realized that's what the gap was. So we went hell for leather. We invested massively. We did partnerships with a few people who did have some content. We invested in starting to create pipelines of content. We obviously don't produce ourselves. We work with producers, but we commission content, right? And to commission content, you need to have a development pipeline. You need to be developing shows. So we really went, hell for leather and started to create a whole bunch of content. And today, I think we probably have not just the largest number of originals in the market, but we have I would go so far as to say that our development pipeline is also probably fatter than anybody else's in the market. We did early deals with a lot of folks today who are, larger. We understood that there would be talent in this business that is not just from, the existing Bollywood or the existing television industry.
Current celebrity,
No, celebrities are important. There's no doubt. We've used in the past and we will continue to use in the future, as we will use Bollywood talent. But I think that we realized that because of the structure of the market, this wasn't enough. It's very good, but they just aren't enough, right? So you had to go out and start developing pipelines from television, from Bollywood, and then from neither of them, because you just needed to create that supply, right? I mean, I wish we could work with all top directors and producers of all TV and Bollywood, but they just aren't enough. Like, we need, and I think if you've seen in the last 2-3 years, so many names that you guys would never have heard of before have started to emerge as really big portions. And I think that, we can say, it's a lot of creative freedom that we've given them and all of those things. But actually, it's just, if you really think about it, it's just the distribution pipe. Yeah. There is that much more demand that you can create.
I've always believed that. I've always thought that we think of the India media industry over the last 25 years has appeared much larger than it actually is, right? I've always thought that the amount of content produced is really, really small. I think that's true for music. I think that's true for video content. Obviously, I think that's true for podcasting as well. But I've always kind of felt that it just appears much larger than it is. We have 10 stars. Yeah. I mean, like, you compare that to any other film industry and it'll be like, what are you talking about?
Because there's no distribution. I mean, that's the key thing is that when you actually start diving deep into it, right? We have, like I said, I mean, technically, I think it's some 14,000 screens. But if you take away the older single screens and you take away some of the big regional markets that are very oversaturated with screens, Andhra comes to mind. Andhra is actually a market where there's a, screen ratio is very good. But outside of those few pockets, right, the screen density in India is next to nothing. So how do stars emerge? You need to make sure stars will emerge, more stars will emerge, or more talent will emerge when there's more opportunity for more products to be made, more products to be distributed, and for customers to go and watch them. And the same with television, right? We never had segmentation. If you look at any major media market in the world, premium cable, broadcast, local, blah 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 blah, right? There's multiple kinds of packages, whatever. All this happened in India much later. And some of this is to do with even satellite, right? I mean, satellite and cable have been around in India.
I mean, like all we had is satellite, right? Everything is a subset of satellite, right? So it's all India distribution, which I think
exactly. Yeah, it's all India distribution. Even now there's no local advertising on TV. There can't be. If you're buying a spot on a big national channel, you're buying a spot on a big national channel. You make some kind of like gut level bet of saying, okay, these guys have more distribution in that state, so if I want to target that state, maybe I'll go to this channel. But there's no way to really target it. And similarly, there were regulatory hurdles as well to how you could price channels, on how you could, what it took to start a new channel. Available transponder bandwidth on DTH.
Yes.
There are once you start diving into it, and I'm probably not the best qualified person to talk about the very specific challenges of it, but to talk to someone from that business, it was not easy. How do you get, and before DTH and that sort of rolled out at scale, prior to that, the analog cable, right? You actually had channels having to pay a huge amount of distribution fees because you had to be in the top 15 channels for any of your customers to actually click on it. If you were channel 100 on an analog feed, you just never get to it. So
that was the cable TV mafia of sorts, right? Where you were locked by that local distributors bundling.
Yeah, so I think that, I mean, look, I'm not going to use that word, but I think that there were huge issues with distribution. Let's just put it this way.
Yeah.
And what that did is, again, you had a few number of channels. You have this time slot. Remember, that's linear and we are non-linear, right? There's that much. So where do you distribute all this content? How does this content make money? Which means if the content doesn't make money, or what, eventually people won't make more, and therefore talent will be restricted and so on and so forth. So I think what non-linear distribution did was just absolutely opened up this market like no other. And like I said, the dirty little secret, so to speak, was that everybody thought, as you started off by saying, oh, you guys didn't even have a content bank. How did you do it? I mean, what use is the content bank? It's the same audience. Unlike the West, right, that has been collecting, segmented content on mass entertainment for decades. And which is why today, if you see, Friends still makes $1 billion a year in revenue. Right? That show still makes $1 billion a year in syndication revenue.
Wow.
Because it's good. And it appealed to a particular kind of audience, and you will watch that again and again. And Game of Thrones, by the way, started in 2008. We keep referring to it as contemporary product, but the first season of Game of Thrones was 12 years ago, and it ended 4 years ago. Right? Yeah. So I think that, and just to make all of us feel old, Friends ended in 2004, 16 years ago.
Yeah. Before we all graduated.
So well, not me. That's what I'm saying. Exactly. I was in college.
I was in college when it started, but I mean, like, I was not in college by the time it ended.
but I think that, but here's the thing, right? That it's that old. So and it does well. But I think that Indian content just wasn't that deep. You had a lot of daily soaps. You had lots of versions of Saas Bahu and whatever, which have no value beyond 7 episodes. And no one's going to watch episode 1 of some 25-year-old show that has got 5 episodes a week. Soaps don't get that kind of viewership. And reality TV, while it does do well for television with some audiences, I mean, you're never going to rewatch a reality show, right? No one is going to go back to watch.
There's no repeat value.
Some reality show where you know the winner.
It'll live on as a meme. It won't live on as a show. Probably.
You can't, right? It is by its very nature linear, right? But there was very little depth of anything else. There was no cooking shows, or very few cooking shows. There were no dramatic fiction, limited series dramatic fiction. There were no made-for-TV movies. For example, in the US, the Hallmark Channel. I don't know if you're familiar with it. The damn channel has an industry. I mean, a Hallmark movie is like defined item
genre.
So I think a lot of that was, so in India, the way I put it is OTT in the West was a distribution innovation, right? You had content, you had lots of content. Netflix licensed a lot of that content. They started obviously then realizing we're not going to license forever. Eventually, our suppliers will want to control it. Let's start making it. They started making it. But basically, it was a distribution innovation. Cable ARPU is $100. Let's offer customers at $10. But in India, it is actually a product innovation. That content didn't exist before. We had to go out and commission and create it. So today, if you're an owner of content as a broadcast company, sure, you can take that to OTT, and you do, and there is an audience for it. But you're not going to get any newer audience for it. Someone's not going to start watching it just because it's on OTT and, didn't watch it on TV. Some maybe, obviously.
No, that makes sense. I mean, like genre innovations and stuff like that, right? I mean, like just in that sense, it makes a ton of sense.
Just supply, Amit. I mean, 2019, there was. So let's just look at number of hours, right?
Yeah.
So TV produces a lot of hours of content. There's no doubt about that. But that is because the format of the show is that you create half an hour of content every day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's slow moving. It's not likely something you guys will watch, but there are audience for it. But it's a lot of content of large volume, but not very high library value.
Mm-hmm.
OTT in 2009 was 500-600 hours of content created total. 2019, sorry, 500-600 hours of content created. In 2020, COVID probably stopped a bunch of production. I think that was probably 1,500 to 2,000 hours.
Yeah.
In 2021, again, COVID probably affected some degree of production. I think that's probably 4,000 hours. I think in the next 2-3 years, that will go to 10,000 hours, right? And that 10,000 hours was zero 3 years ago.
Yeah.
TV is still making TV content, movies are still being made, but zero became 10,000 hours a year of reasonably good quality repeat. Obviously, not everything is repeat value. If a show doesn't do well, or if it's not a good show, it's not going to have repeat value. But it structurally has repeat value.
Yeah, you can always watch it again. Yeah,
exactly. So I think that there's just a sheer supply of content has increased like infinitely in the last 3-4 years, and it will probably scale up at 100% a year for the next 2-3 years.
And when you put it in this perspective, right? Actually, I'm realizing that and there's a lot more to come. I know where it's so easy to make the transition from this sort of OTT large format, storytelling originals to what you guys are doing with short video, right? Because it's still filling that same void of lack of content in a sense. It's literally filling the hours.
Perfect segue, right? What is short video?
Yeah.
Why has it been so successful, right? Globally. And why have we started doing it? As you said, right? And this is what MX has always been about, right? As you know, we haven't really talked about music and games, but I'm not sure we'll get time today, but the idea is that we want you to spend that hour and a half in the evening watching our long format content, but you need an hour to watch it, right? You need to sit down for 1 hour to watch something for 1 hour.
Yes.
Short video gives you an opportunity to do it for 5-minute chunks throughout the day, 5-minute, 10-minute chunks throughout the day. And again, it is just this entire base of content, this entire base of creators, this entire base of people who are being able to connect with fans and create content for them, and this entire base of consumers who have stuff to watch.
Yeah, hunger for it. Yeah.
Not exist. This entire supply of content didn't exist until the short video industry, invented it.
Happened. Yeah.
So I think that even today for us, we are really, really, really excited about that, because over there again, I think the really key thing. Obviously, look, we talk a lot about, and we haven't got to the tech bit of this. We should get to tech in some form, since you're a tech podcast. But I think if you go back there again, you have a large population with time on their hands who wants to watch, and you have a large population who has a lot of talent, and short video has created that platform for that talent and that time to be matched in the most efficient manner. And that obviously is the secret to our recommendation algorithms, and the recommendation algorithms that were invented by the incumbent short video industry before we had a chance to step into it. But I think that it is something that is a very, very unique phenomenon that has happened in the world in the last few years. And this is not, it's not social media. I think that short video is not social media. This is something
No,
that
it's not. It's
they're
pure
different
content.
animals.
Yeah,
It's a
is.
very interesting animal. It's a very interesting animal, right? Social media was connecting with people, right?
Yeah.
This is definitely a connection between people in some senses, but it is a creator-consumer connection, right? Social
It's a
media is a
massive
creator-creator
one-to-many.
connection.
Yeah, it's a massive one-to-many
Social
sort
media
of
is a
relation.
creator-to-creator connection, right? It's your personal content, this, that. And now, obviously, social media has expanded into broadcast effectively, right? Facebook
Yeah,
today or Instagram today
yeah,
or any of these
live
guys
or
today
whatever.
are
Yeah,
essentially, there's a lot of it is just essentially by broadcast. I mean, basically, sort of one to many, right?
yeah,
You said you have a YouTube live coming up, Amit, which means that you're going to go out there and you're probably going to have whatever, hopefully millions of fans, watching you.
I hope
Wa-
that's true. Probably dozens, more
absolutely.
likely.
but that's the thing, right? Whereas, so I think that what this did was very, very interesting. Where again, it just was it is a very efficient way of matching supply and demand of of talent. People demand talent in the form of content to watch,
Yeah,
and people have talent. Right? The old way of doing it effectively was the talent shows. India's Got Talent, Indian Idol, blah blah blah. All of
yeah,
that is all been distilled into one
Yeah.
extremely large pool of creators, consumers, and matching systems. Um, and over there were judges and curators. Here, there are algorithms. But
yeah,
I think that's that whole industry. And I think it's been superb. I mean, we've done really well in it because we've understood that basic consumer supply demand from day one. It is the basic consumer supply demand. People want stuff to watch and consume. People want to create different types of content, but it is something that and obviously the nuances between the two are quite a few, and we have to learn a lot of
right.
that along the way. But I think today, if you look at it, I mean, you've got the whole short video industry is probably less than 100 million DAU right now. It's probably
Wow. Yeah, it's a long way to go.
and my guess is that my guess is that. And obviously there are people in the market that claim all kinds of numbers. I'm not going to go into numbers today because I think it's just a different. Like it's just honestly, there's just so much out there that I will leave you guys to make your own conclusions. But the the crazy thing here is that it is likely to be 500 million down in a few
Wow.
years,
Yeah,
right? There is a lot,
it's
and this is
possible.
where I'm saying
Very, very possible. Yeah,
No,
China
it's
700, 800 million dollars today on short video alone.
yeah.
yeah,
And short video is, I mean, like the thing about it is there's something for everybody, right? I wind up watching a bunch of short video and I have like a weird kind of mix of stuff that comes in, right? Like I'll get like NBA stuff, I'll have like random people dancing, I'll have like, no, like and it's all stuff I'm interested enough that I keep coming to it over and over again, right? I mean, like I'll
Yeah,
spend five,
because
10 minutes on one of the short video apps every day just because it's fun stuff, right? I mean, like, and it fits my schedule rather than me having to watch video in a way where I have to conform to the video schedule, which I guess is like even weirder than when you had to like sit down and watch at a particular time. But I mean, like, just in terms of like what kind of time I have available at any given point in time, right? Short video really kind of works well on that.
absolutely. So if you look at the sliding scale, right? Linear TV was like, oh shit. Well, movies were like, okay, I need to get out of my house to go to a theater, buy a
I
ticket,
know.
and sit down when somebody decides that
Yeah.
I can watch a
Yeah,
movie, right? Someone has made a time. On TV, it was one step better. Fine, you need to go anywhere, whatever. You just sat down in front of the TV at that particular time and put it on. OTT took it a next level, saying, you know what, you can watch it whenever, wherever you want, but you still have to find, as Amit said, you still have to find 1 hour or half an hour or
yeah,
whatever it is.
yeah,
Short video has taken away even that demand. Now, you said you can watch anything from 1 minute to 100 minutes depending on the time you have available.
Yeah.
So now we demand nothing of you, right? Eventually we'll plug straight into your brains, and you may not even need your eyes.
yeah.
Uh,
Basically,
um,
yeah. You'll
I don't know
you'll
whether you guys
always
saw
be watching video. You,
I don't know whether you guys saw the Neuralink demo video
yeah,
that Elon Musk put out, I think a few
Yeah.
months ago. But I think that's where we're all heading, where like, you
Yeah.
just be plugged
projecting
in
images
and
in your brain.
and projecting directly to, whatever part of the visual cortex or whatever it is in there that does all this stuff.
It's funny though, when I started to ask you the initial question about the origins of MX, I was, what I knew was that obviously you guys acquired a largely distributed mobile app, which was used for an entirely different purpose. But the main sort of hook you had was that it was already in so many phones, right? But what you just told us is it makes so much sense that when you got that distribution, the biggest challenge you had or the insight you had was that you had to fill it with content which was just not there. It was not being built for anyone. But another thing which I know you guys consciously did was also make sure that you go the free video route, right? Like the not the subscription. Like I know these terms are now like not the SVOD route, but the AVOD route, right? So AVOD and SVOD. So what was that? How does that fit into the business model or the specifics of, let's say, India as a country, or even your tech, I would say, plans of product rollout?
So I think, a couple of different things to mention here. I think when we started out, when we were talking about the origin of it, one of the things we said was that, at that time, cheap data was fueling large volumes of new people coming online. And I think in a country like India, you have to first establish trust. You have to be able to go out and talk to people in a manner where they trust you, because inherently, as a society, for various reasons, we take time to build trust, right? We take time to build trust with companies, with governments, with people, with whatever time, right? And it's a few hours of chatting on sociology as to why that is the case. But I think it's a reasonably well accepted fact that that's the case here, and probably that's why people are so value conscious as well, right? People think twice about, and I think that's value consciousness at any level. I think India is one of those few countries where people who spend 4 lakhs on a entry level car or 40 lakhs on a high mid range car, or 80 lakhs on a luxury car, have a very similar evaluation matrix in terms of they don't want to pay even 1 rupee extra, right? So if you're getting a 50 lakh rupee Mercedes for 49 lakhs, you're a happy camper. As happy as getting a 5 lakh, let us say, Santro for 4.9. It's that same part of the brain is doing that. So I think because of that same sort of user behavior that we were sort of trying to think through, we actually went in and started doing that with our content. We said, let's go out there. Let's go out and show people what we've got, which is kind of where the free model came from. Again, remember, free is a model that can be sustainable when you have volume. So we did have a leg up when we began, right? We had that huge distribution base that we were going to use, and we were very confident that we sooner or later be able to scale up our streaming on it. We were very confident of our strategy on it. We shouldn't have been that confident. We changed a lot. But I think that, long story short, we had the ingredients for free. We had scale. We had content that was resonating. We had a market that we thought was going to respond very well to it over time. And over time, we'll think about different monetization models. And then at the last sort of peg to this is something that, I think a lot of large consumer tech companies or consumer companies in general think about, which is that if you got a base of a very large audience, right, there are ways to ensure monetization that is win-win for consumer and provider, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be ads. It doesn't necessarily have to be subscriptions. It can be like one of the big things on short video, for example, that is big in China, and possibly we will have a similar view on it in India, is tipping and gifting, right? That's something that is a completely new model. Influencer-based commerce. I recently read a report that said that even today, when it's not sort of formally out there, I think influencer-led commerce, right? Whether it's a forward on a WhatsApp or like an influencer could be anybody in your life. It doesn't necessarily have to be someone with 50 million followers. You're an influencer to me, as an example. Influencer-driven commerce was like huge. So that model is yet to even like take off formally in India. Live gifting and tipping is very, very early in India. AVOD is something that we know very well, which is why that is the model we picked as the first thing. We are currently testing out very soon we'll be testing out an SVOD model on MX. But we'll be testing it out in a very different way, right? The typical sort of media company thinking about it is, oh my God, make a plan, make a price, go out, blast it all over the place and tell customers how low. We think our DNA is a tech company. We think like a tech company, and that to my mind means, iteration. So you form a hypothesis about something that you think will work in the market, take it out there, see how it does, and keep refining, iterating, and then scaling. And I think that with paid models of consumption, we will do the same thing. We will find product market fit before we scale it, right? As opposed to assuming that a product market fit has been found, because I think I unequivocally say that standard monthly SVOD is not a product market fit for mass India. It is a fit for a certain amount of audience, and it does well with them. But there are probably many more models available in this country that will probably end up doing much better than just standard monthly payments for access to content. So we will think through those as well.
That's interesting. I've actually looked a lot at this because we've been looking at this for IVM as well, right? In sense of what do we want to do? How do you think about simplicity in this context, right? Because I think that one of the big reasons why you see the monthly simple kind of, simple subscription as opposed to a lot of different variations is because of the complexity involved or inherent in doing like a bunch of different things. Micropayments or all the other kind of tipping and this and that and all that kind of stuff. How do you kind of look at that?
So it's a good debate, right? How do you think about those things? So let's take a couple of examples, right? Look at the cell phone industry, an industry that has exceedingly done well in monetization worldwide, right? Even in India, if you remember, let's go back to Jio. When Jio launched, the whole thing was, oh my God, this much money, that's it, the whole world, free this, free that, whatever. Go and go to Jio.com or Airtel.com or whatever it is, and look at just the sheer number of packs available.
Yeah.
Right? Everything from a 1 GB a day, 1.5 a day, 28-day validity, 56-day validity, data only, voice plus data plus SMS, on network, off network, blah, 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 blah.
With OTT, without OTT, yeah.
Simplicity is, in my mind, being able to address a consumer's needs smoothly rather than having only one offering. And India, again, I'm telling you, my view is very simple, that I don't think that India has had that level of simplicity, because I think that it works in economies that are a little bit more used to their sort of core infrastructural needs being met, right? I don't want to go so far as to say we like complexity, we like choice. And it goes back to that same question of saying our audiences take time to trust brands. Choice provides transparency. Transparency leads to trust. I think that's one factor in it. The second is that we are not one market. We are like, any way you want to slice it, by language, by geography, by income levels, by, what have you, right? The thing is that when you look at, mean incomes in India, sure, they're X amount, right? You look at median incomes, they are much lower, right? So there, whereas in mean medium matches in many other markets are much closer than they are in India. So I think that, so you have to be able to go out there and figure out what is the right model for the right audience. And in an ideal world, and that's something is an open challenge to our product and technology and engineering teams, that how do you take massive complexity and boil it down to simplicity in a product, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's the question you basically asked, Amit, and my long-winded answer is we are figuring it out. But I think that's the challenge. You got to be able to have the ingredients out there and be able to create the recipe on the fly, right? So ideally speaking, when you see a buy screen versus when Amit sees a buy screen, between the two of you, I realized I was pointing in that direction and no one could figure out who I was pointing the interesting thing is I should be able to just show you personalized screens saying, look, I think my algorithm says that Amit's more likely to buy an annual pack. Shiladitya may want a weekend pack. He doesn't want to spend $300 or whatever it is. He is happy to spend 10 rupees. to buy a weekend
Right.
ticket
Yeah.
to a show or whatever it is, right? Based on your consumption patterns, your history, your device type, all of the various different data vectors, and that eventually should show you simplicity in a manner that you feel it simple. But we are able to create a a suite of products that is able to address different customer needs.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think that's the, I would say, the massive advantage you have, obviously, right? You said you're a tech company first. Obviously, you're doing a bunch of this A/B testing of all your sort of product iterations. You mentioned, I know we probably won't be able to talk about, but you're also branching out to non video, right? So it was long format, short video. You're now doing games and a lot more. So you're obviously filling that consumption void which
Yeah,
you're referring to from the start, right? With more and more things for people to spend time on the app. Uh, you know,
yeah.
uh, as a like sort of without going into, let's say, we didn't talk about the MX, the Taka market and how that sort of exploded. Uh, what do you think is what do you think is still going to be your unique formula to sort of make sure you're ahead of the pack, right? I mean, is you have all the advantages that you've created, the moat, to put it in VC terms, that you guys have already sort of won. What is it that you are focusing on to sort of make sure you're always leading that pack?
So I think that it's an apt time to sort of maybe use Takata as an example, right? I said, like you said, it is a unique situation where an incumbent left the market, product market fit
Yeah,
was established,
established.
and
Yeah,
suddenly you had this massive void, and then others stepped in. And you asked me to be real, so I'll be real. Everyone took time to then come up to that product market fit, right?
yeah,
But I think we understood two, three things very clearly. Like I said, one is that consumption is simply about ensuring creators and consumers are matched. And if you look at Takatak, and the reason why we've grown so massively fast in it, and we are today, like I said, I'm not going to comment on specific numbers because everybody claims everything in this market. In fact, it's got to a point where there's no real definition of what a DAO is. But I think that we understood that fundamental thing, right? And we built out we understood consumers. We have very large scale consumption on MX and its allied platforms. So we were very, very, very quickly able to scale up that platform while making many mistakes. And we are now in a position where, again, those three components, ensuring high quality creator supply, incentivizing people to create, incentivizing people to create well, ensuring that that creation is of a particular kind of quality, ensuring that the recommendation systems do a great job, and then making sure customers have a flick, like a, just a beautiful experience, just flicking away and accessing that content. That's why we'll win, because we understand that consumer, we understand the creator. And in the end, remember, all these creators, like, one of the things we're able to offer them is that every single person that's coming on to Takata today, whether they admit it or not, eventually wants to be Shah Rukh Khan. And that's why they're doing it.
Hmm.
But an influencer is, I mean, that's the ultimate influencer, right? Whatever, such as
yeah.
Virat Kohli, what do you want to call him? And Virat, by the way, is on Takata. So the plug moment there.
Of
Yeah.
course,
But I
he
think that
must do it.
but I think that every single one of these people want to go there. And what we can tell them is, look, we know how to do this. If you start breaking out on Takata, guess what? We can put you in a big A grade OTT show, right?
Hmm.
And
Oh,
guess
that's
what? You get to
interesting.
be on a billboard. You get to be on a billboard, or you get to be on the front page of a newspaper, or you get to be big in a fantastic shared trailer
Hmm.
with a bunch of more interesting folks, and so on and so forth.
Actually, I
So
just saw a bunch of big YouTubers are part of podcasts, in the sense that fiction podcasts being created by this one very specific production company who works with like some of the biggest Hollywood stars have started working with like really big YouTube creators as stars of like fictional podcasts. So
No, but
yeah, all
what
there
kinds
you
what
of
go.
things.
what you mentioned is literally also all in-house for you guys, right? That's where I
Yep.
think that's the biggest obvious advantage, right? That it's literally
I mean,
there.
that's a
Uh,
and then like I said, we've been dealing with a large scale business for a while, and in the end, look, those matching algorithms, we've talked about them. They're not simple, right? They're not. There's a lot of learning on how you acquire users, use their acquisition data, make sure they're served up the right content, etc., etc., etc. But I think the
yeah.
one thing I'll say, without getting into like deeper details and the specifics of it, is that look, matching is not just about the algorithms you use. It's about a lot about the input data, right? How much you have to actually work with, right? There is no bread. Bread making is one art, but if there's no flour, you don't make bread.
Okay.
So you have to have experience with scale. You have to have experience with actually using that scale, understanding what signals you're capturing, using those signals in the appropriate manner to then create appropriate recommendations, right? If you're not able to do that, you're you may have the best algorithms in the world. If you don't have the input data streams, there's nothing you can do. And you can have the massive amount of data. If you don't understand how to create those algorithms and use them properly, that data is valueless. So I think that, to be very honest, like I said, it's only after I came and started off with MX, did I really, when I got into it, understand what big data meant. Before that, it was a buzzword. But at our scale, platform globally, probably 400 odd million monthly actors, I finally understood what big data meant, right? And we kept saying big data, big data, big data. I was like, yeah, now finally I've got an understanding of what this is and the complexity in understanding it, collecting it, properly dealing with it, and then using the appropriate, whether it's algorithms, whether it's targeting, whatever it is to do it. And by the way, we apply that same logic even on OTT. Like the one big thing, I mentioned this again, we're not a media company, we're a tech company that builds media products. The big difference is that a lot of media companies think about the world in a linear way. There is one newspaper a day, there is 3 hours of primetime television in a day. You can't change that. In non-linear, it's very different. How you think about a share of a user's time, you don't have to have in TV, you win when you have the most important show at
Prime
8 p.m.
slot. Yeah.
Prime slot. And you have to have that. You're competing for that time with other people. It's a zero-sum game. At 8 p.m., someone can watch one show, right? In the linear world, right? And maybe newspapers are a little bit different, but in the end, not that many people read 3 newspapers, right? Most people read one. But in non-linear, you don't have to do that. It's not zero sum. The more content you have, the better. And but it's valueless again if you're not able to take that and appropriately serve it to people. Just like we appropriately want to eventually serve you a particular monetization option
Method.
We want to serve you that content, right? Maybe Amit's like I said, a monthly subscriber, and he'll pay up front. Maybe we'll put you 17 minutes into an episode and then say, listen, you want to watch more, you pay now. 5 rupees.
Oh.
I'm not saying this is off the top of my head.
Those are the trade-offs, right? I mean, like, because I was talking to somebody who runs a big subscription podcasting business, right? And they're like, the difference in conversion when you do that as opposed to when you just make an ad-free thing is like literally 3x. Right. So, I mean, like, you got to look at, like, all of those things, right?
Look at your data, look at what your users are telling you, basically. But wow. Karan, I think we've learned a lot more about the business of streaming than I think I ever.
I think we need a part 2, man. Seriously, I think we
will have to do a part 2 because I probably there's so much more underlying, like you said, right? All of this is possible only because the tech is, to be honest, smooth. I still have issues with other OTT apps who just don't get that right. And
I told you this when we started off. Our compression. So the same thing, the stuff I talked about on the player, that we are that good. Our compression is that good. We rewrite codecs from ground up. We have customized codecs. We make sure our data used per minute is our data used per minute is absolutely optimal and gives you high quality at low MBs. We spend a lot of time on that. We spend a lot of time on personalization and recommendation. We spend a lot of time, actually, like I said, so there's tech encompasses product and engineering, right? A lot of this, what I talked about right now, is engineering. But even on the product side, we spend a lot of time, right? Where do you have these trade-offs? How good is your ad tech? How irritated is your user going to be or not be if he sees more ads or less ads? How do you create infrastructure I'll tell you right now, we remember 2 weeks ago, whatever it was, Akamai went down, right? It was big, whatever.
Yes. Yeah.
We had no outage, or like single digit percentage outage, because
Wow.
our failovers worked.
Redundancy
We,
and bunch of stuff. Yeah.
yeah, so we invest a lot in infrastructure, we invest a lot in tech, we invest a lot in making those things, as you said, those bells and whistles, because without that, any business model is valueless.
No. On that note, I think the best tech is the tech you can't see or perceive, right? So it's supposed to be
Absolutely.
invisible. So on that
Yeah.
note, I think this has been enlightening almost hour, Karan. As a final shout out, where obviously people will want more and definitely want to maybe reach out to you. I know you're on Twitter. Do you want to give a shout out about your Twitter handle or anything else about MX? In where do people find you and where do people reach out to you?
Yeah, no, Twitter's great. Just at my handle is just Karan Bedi, easy to remember. And yeah, would love to hear from your listeners and from you guys. I'm known to be fond of debating, so I love to get into the nitty gritty of understanding things by what they call the Socratic method, just like going question answer question answer question answer question answer.
Mhm.
Um, but I think that. But I think that it is really it's super interesting. Would love to talk more about this with you guys over Twitter, with your listeners, etc., etc. Karan Bedi is my handle. You have questions about MX, with you want other parts of the team to get into, just tag me or tag MX player. We'll direct you to the right folks if anyone has any
Awesome.
questions. A couple of the other teams are on Twitter anyway. I think the handles are also reasonably well known. But yeah, very happy to do it.
Cool. Awesome. Also, just
Super.
quick message to everybody. Please do like us or review us on whatever podcast platform you're listening to. It's very helpful. Also, if you enjoyed this conversation, tell a friend. That's the way that the word spreads.
Absolutely. And I think definitely we're going to have to ask Karan to come back and do a part two of this, because even at 1.2x, this is not enough. So we are we're really happy we could do this. And thank you. Thank you really so
Absolutely,
much for
absolutely,
this awesome
Shiladitya.
chat.
Thank you, Shiladitya. Thank you, Amit. Look forward.
Thanks.
IVM.